next speaker is District Attorney Carol Chambers, who received her nursing degree from Texas Christian University, after which she went to work in the emergency room at Denver General for 2 years while attending law school at the University of Denver. And it was there at Denver General that she was exposed to the results of things like homelessness, drug abuse, poverty, violent crime, child abuse, and mental illness for the first time. In her last year of law school, she interned at the Denver District Attorney's Office, where she met her husband, Nathan, who was a Denver prosecutor. After receiving her law degree, she was awarded the American Jurisprudence Award in Ethics. Ms. Chambers went on to work in the private sector with Long and Jodin PC, where she practiced medical malpractice defense, before becoming a prosecutor at the District Attorney's Office for the 18th Judicial District in 1990. During her time at the District Attorney's Office, she prosecuted hundreds of cases from traffic offenses to homicides, and was appointed Chief Deputy District Attorney in 98, where she went on to create a special victims unit to support prosecutions involving child victims, the elderly, and other vulnerable at-risk members of the community. In 2004, she was elected to the position of District Attorney for the 18th Judicial District, which is Arapahoe, Douglas, Elbert, and Lincoln counties. Since that time, she's been working to implement programs to benefit and protect the community, assist victims, prevent crime, and increase sentences for criminals who commit crimes in her district. District Attorney Chambers.
Thank you. That took all my 10 minutes, so I'm going to sit down. You know, I have to say, my job is law enforcement. And it's interesting to me to hear people talk about the government. We live in a republic. This is your government. If the majority of people want something, they can make it happen. And I think at this point in time, we have a majority of people who don't want drugs to be legalized. And I think, you know, it's all about the conversation. And so I will tell you that drugs is not I don't have a lot of personal experience with drugs. My family, I have no addicts in my family. I've never tried them except prescription drugs. And I did see a lot of devastating effects of substance abuse when I was a nurse in the emergency room at Denver General. You do see really the people who are most affected, I think, by any given thing in that environment, because it is the truly down and out who end up there. So I wanted to start a little, you know, with the basic premise, war on drugs, because as I read the information about this particular conversation, it said, you know, should we strengthen the war on drugs? Should we give it more resources, or is it time to start looking at an alternative approach and adopt an alternative approach? And I think there is an alternative approach that is being adopted and is being implemented at this point in time, and it is based on scientific research, much of which is funded by the federal government. So I think I bring maybe a message of hope, and maybe a message that at some point there will be a reconciliation of the two sides of this issue, because I think medical science is going to lead us to a place where addiction will be understood and treatable in a completely different way than it is now. But I think we have to look at the history of the war on drugs, because the war on drugs is the war on crime in general. From 1960 to 1975, there was a huge increase in crime in the United States. And you will recognize that period of time as being, including the Nixon administration. And Nixon also declared war on cancer. I mean, I think it was a concept, we're really going after some of these issues, and we're really going to try to deal with what are the root causes of crime. And based on what was known at that point in time, I think there was not a great deal of faith in treatment, in intervention, and in the concept of rehabilitation. So the approach was, for many years after that, to put people in prison, to punish them, and to really be tough on crime in a way that really provided no change in the environment, no change in people who might be involved in the root causes of crime. But there has been in the last, well, first of all, in the last 30 years, there's been a remarkable change in discoveries of medical science. One of the reasons you see people use drugs is because of mental illness. It's self-medication. For example, people who are hyperactive, HD, or I can't remember the acronym for it, but people who are hyperactive actually suffer from their brain is too slow. So a teaspoon of methamphetamine in their coffee makes them feel better. It speeds up their brain. So, but you also see people who are bipolar. They tend to use alcohol. They tend to use marijuana to treat themselves. Well, in the last 30 years, I can tell you, when I was a nurse, when I started as a nurse in 1979, there was no treatment for depression. There was no treatment for schizophrenia. There was no treatment for there was treatment for bipolar disease. We used lithium at that point in time. But I had a friend whose father was a psychiatrist who went to the edge of town and blew his brains out with a shotgun because he was depressed, and he realized that nothing could be done for him. If he had just waited a few years, there would have been effective treatments for his condition. But so we have come a long way in being able to treat people so that they don't have to self-medicate. Now, there's also the issues of it feels good to be manic, to believe that you are God, to believe that you are the king. So there's some issues still with people not wanting to take those medications, the side effects. But so we've made huge progress in treating that root cause of drug use. We have also started to look at ways that we can intervene effectively with people to address their addiction issues. There's an estimate I heard at a recent drug court conference that perhaps as many as 50% or more of all African American males in the criminal justice system have had a incident in their lives that results in post-traumatic stress disorder that they are unwilling to share with their attorney and with others. So doesn't that give you an interesting intervention that we can use to look at why we have minority overrepresentation in the criminal justice system? But we are looking at all of these reasons why people get involved in drug use in the first place, and really, and once they are involved in drug use, how we can treat that. So in most of the jurisdictions in the metropolitan area, and in many jurisdictions in the state of Colorado, there are drug courts where people who are charged with possession come in and get treatment. We are funding treatment now through surcharges that we give to people who are convicted of drug crimes, and we have a lot of money for treatment in the last probably 2-3 years that has not been available before that. So we are making, I think, a great deal of progress in having a knowledgeable, science-based, research-based, demonstrably effective approach to this issue. The trend here is only going to continue. This is nothing we're going to give up on now because we have seen it works. In our office, we have a cutting-edge juvenile diversion program where we put the kids who come in for possession of marijuana, which, by the way, is a Class 2 petty offense for which you cannot go to prison, cannot go to jail. It's punishable by up to a $100 fine for having up to 2 ounces of marijuana. So that's a very reasonable, if it's going to be illegal, you can't go to jail for it. But different drugs require different approaches. About 3 months ago, I asked the head of our probation department, what is Matrix? Because Matrix, we have thought up till recently that methamphetamine addiction was something that was just intractable, that really we were not going to make any progress with methamphetamine addiction. Some people on the West Coast have found a way to treat methamphetamine addiction called the Matrix system. I asked the probation department about it. They had not heard of it. Now I can tell you the Matrix system is being used in the Jefferson County Recovery Court. It is something that we are implementing in Colorado. And it is effective. And I have seen myself in our mental health court, people recover from meth addiction.
And be able to, day-by-day process, it takes a year to clear out the effects of methamphetamine on the brain. We are seeing progress, and we are seeing that people can be rehabilitated from very addictive drugs. When people come into our system, we have come in on a first-time possession charge. On say, cocaine, methamphetamine, it is a classic felony. That is the least serious of all the felonies. I think it is probably impossible, and I can't speak for all jurisdictions in the state of Colorado, but if you come into the 18th Judicial District on a possession charge, I think it is impossible for you to make your way to prison on your first offense. There's just too many chances that you are given. You may get a misdemeanor, start out with, you can't go to prison on a misdemeanor. You will get a deferred judgment, which means that if you complete your contract with us at the end of the period of probation, withdraw your plea, it's not going to be on your record. If you come in again, even if you didn't do a realize the issue is addiction, not criminal behavior. So, on your deferred judgment, probation is going to give you many chances. On your second deferred judgment, they're going to give you many chances. If you end up convicted and on probation, and you just cannot complete probation, you're going to get 90 days in jail, which is the most jail you can get in a county jail. 90 days in jail is really probably 45 days in jail, and then you're going to be out of the system. You're not going to prison. People who go to prison for possession of controlled substance, one, either have a significant criminal history behind them, and it's the combination of that criminal history and their present charge that takes them to prison, or they have been plea bargained to possession from a more serious charge. Now, we do treat distribution like a crime, and that is dealt with much more seriously. We do differentiate between people who are distributing drugs because they want to support their habit. So they're selling a $20 rock so that they can buy, so that they can support their own habit. That's different than somebody who is selling a much larger amount of cocaine. But we do treat distribution differently. Bottom line is there are policy issues here that are based on, more and more, on thoughtful consideration of moving drug policy to a place where we are truly addressing what needs to be addressed and not just putting people in prison. That's happened. That is a done deal at this point in time. And I think you can see our legislature is having this conversation on a regular basis. There's a criminal justice coordinating committee that is looking at drug policy as well as other criminal prevention policy. So the bottom line is addictive drugs are designated as illegal by the federal government, by the state government, because they are so addictive. And when people become addicted, there are people who can use those drugs without becoming addicted. But for the majority of people who use them, they will. And people who become addicted tend not to work. They become dysfunctional. They become a burden on the family, on the community who has to support them. They still have to find a way to pay for their drugs. So they still may be involved in crime. They still may drive under the influence. What we see is when marijuana is legalized, juveniles use it more, 2.5 times increase in use among juveniles. Bottom line, we are working towards alternatives. We are doing so now based on research, science, and have programs that have been shown to work, and that is how drug policy in the future will be determined.